So, okay, once again, good morning. This will be the continuation of our discussion about advanced database administration. So, the topic is regulatory compliance in database administration to be presented by Miss Grachel Ching. Okay, Miss Grachel, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Doc. Uh, Good morning, classmates. Good morning, Doc. I will start my report for this morning. So, um, our topic is about the regulatory compliance and database administration. As an overview, we will be discussing about the regulatory compliance, database compliance, regulatory risk, database compliance solutions, and its present uh, regula- regulations that we have, and then the principles of DB protection. So to start, um, let us first define what is the difference between the regulatory and compliance. So in general, compliance means conforming to a rule such as specifications, policy, standard, or law. Regulatory compliance describes the goal that organizations aspire to achieve in their efforts to ensure that they are aware of the take steps to comply with relevant laws, policies, and regulations, of course. What do you guys think about the database compliance? What does it mean? It specifies that the C-level or the CFO must guarantee the processes used to produce financial reports. Those processes are typically computer programs that access data in a database, and DBAs create and manage the data as well as many of those processes. There are many industry and governmental regulations driving the need to improve data protection, management, and administration. Well, the goal is to regulate corporations in order to reduce fraud and to improve disclosure and financial reporting. The impact and cost of law on IT and database management is significant. It must guarantee and process used to produce financial reports. For example, for those processes are typically computer programs that access data in database, and DBAs create and manage that data as well as many of those processes. Consider also for example, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, commonly referred as the HIPAA. This legislation mandates that healthcare providers protect individuals' healthcare information, going so far as to state that the provider must be able to document everyone who even so much as looked at their information. HIPAA audits frequently require the examination of the processes used to create, document, and review exception reports and logs. When confronted with HIPAA audit, organizations can be required to produce a list of exceptions to policies such as where patients' records access during off hours and by with whom, such example like that. Without database auditing software, it is impossible to produce a list of users who look a specific row or set of rows in any database. So it would be tedious for them to do that. Regulatory compliance holds an important sway over upper level management at most medium to large organizations because of its potent impact. Business executives are keenly aware of the need to comply, although they are not always aware of all the details that involves. This is also because failure to comply can result to prosecution, which may involve huge fines and even regulatory compliance can impose upon C-level executives the need to be able to improve the corporate data, and therefore database systems are protected in that process and produce procedures enacted upon the data are accurate and required. So ensuring compliance requires a collaborative effort between business users, IT, and legal department, of course. This can prove to be a challenge because these three desperate groups are quite distinct and rarely communicate collectively. IT talks to legal only when they have to, and that is always usually just to get approval to contract language for software purchase, for example. IT and business communicate regularly, at least they should, but perhaps not as effectively as they might. But all three are required. These are the list business. So business users must understand the legal requirements imposed on their data and systems as dictated in regulations. And as for the legal, uh, they must be involved to interpret the legal language of the regulations and ensure that the business is taking proper steps to protect itself. And then the IT must be involved to implement the policies and procedures to enact the technology to support the regulatory mandate. Mostly the system structures are came from the IT, so it is very crucial in this point that the IT itself complies. Uh, Organizations need to map and categorize their business data in accordance with how each data element is impacted by regulations. We need to be able to answer questions like which data elements are under the control of which regulation, and what does the regulation require in the way we manage that data. Once mapped, controls and policies need to be enacted that inform enforce compliance with the pertinent regulations. This can require better protection and security, enforce longer data retention periods, and impose stricter privacy sanctions. It also could mandate data quality practices and so on. The next we will be discussing how can we reach regulatory compliance. Um, An organization that is more efficient in achieving and maintaining compliance can get a high quality product to market faster than its competitors, right? So in modern digital societies and markets, and as markets increasingly mandate consistent procedures for the access, processing, and storage of information, regulatory compliance in data management refers to information access, processing, and storage mechanisms designed according to regulations governing their respective data types and semantics. Many companies doing business in regulatory environment treat compliance like another obstacle to success. However, companies that live in regulatory environments have come to understand that compliance is actually a tool that can give them a competitive advantage, right? Statistics show that 72% of senior executives are regulated companies say that ensuring compliance with regulatory requirements is one of the most important challenges in their company. So there is many at stake kapag if a company does not implies or applies any regulatory compliance in their organization. So how can they be able to do that? First, they need to understand C-level the C-level executive should start from this. They have to understand that they are on the hook to meet standards and regulations. Without having a clear understanding of what is required by law, senior level executives can find themselves in hot water, of course. C-level executives have that specific responsibility for making sure that there is always enough resources for quality systems. And the system must be robust enough to do what it's designed to do. Executives are legally required to know what is happening in their company, where their risks are, and what they are doing about them. So next is they have to ensure the entire company understands what's at stake if standards and regulations are not met. Um, it should be reminded that each department regularly about their part in making sure company's product or service or this database security or a new software, for example, is highly quality and free of defects, um, because quality is everybody's responsibility. And then also they can implement a quality management software to ensure the quality of the systems. Like oftenly difficult it is difficult to manage across an entire enterprise, particularly in regulated environment where strict adherence to quality standards are required. Well, automating such processes with a EQMS can help increase efficiency and accelerate product delivery while maintaining such regulatory compliance. And then next, document can help. So everything should be documented because inefficient document control and document management process are the greatest barrier of compliance. So they have to track all of their incorporated standards if it is being applied upon. And then next is incorporate a training software system. So this could help training because training is a critical element of regulatory compliance. And then next is to be prepared for a regulatory audit, such as the example that has been cited earlier, when an audit run is being facilitated in a hospital, for example, and they need to track a patient that has been in the hospital. So they will have trouble finding the specific record if they don't have audit trail on their system when or what time does the patient went in or and went out. Such an sample. And then next is to make sure your company runs in a validated environment. So it would serve as an evidence that basic functions of a computer software applications perform correctly as specified by the provider, correct? And then next is to choose a solution with robust analytics and reporting capabilities for effective management. So this is for the maintenance and the succeeding monitoring for them to ensure quality, um, but also an insight into all quality processes. And then uh, as as an existing solution, for example, we are implementing perimeter security. Um, when it comes to databases, traditional perimeter defenses such as firewalls and intrusion uh, detection systems or intrusion prevention systems, or the IDS or IPS, are grossly inadequate due to the sophisticated nature of the threats posed to database and the specific nature of their vulnerabilities. While many intrusion prevention systems claim to thwart SQL injection attacks, for example, their capabilities in this area are very weak and are usually based on signatures, which hackers can easily evade. IPS are certainly incapable of detecting sophisticated attacks that exploit vulnerabilities that are specific to database software from a particular vendor and to a particular version of the database platforms and are supported by the DB software. So such existing solutions are sometimes not adequate. Another is the native DBMS auditing. Virtually all database management systems have the ability to write audit logs for some of all transactions. However, they are seldom used extensively due to the detrimental effect they have on database performance and the amount of storage they need for full auditing. For security standpoint, the usage of open logs is inadequate anyway, since the logs can easily be manipulated after the fact and privileged users can turn the audit function on and off as they please. So um, let's go to the next um, topic, the database compliance. So we will be discussing its importance and the samples of compliance. For DBAs, to database compliance requirements is critical, correct? As implementing security guidelines and required audit procedures at the start of a new upgraded system prevent the DBA from scrambling from answers. When auditors are asked, when auditors ask questions like what I have said earlier. In addition, it will ensure that production, deployment, and test databases are protected from breaches and unwanted changes. It could also save time, money, and reputation. Of course, if a company was reported as their system has security breaches, their clients will read, like for example, what happened in DPI. I don't know if that's last year, but it is said that the amount being reflected on their mobile apps is not correct. So it will have an impact in their reputation in their company because of this. So we want to prevent any breaches in our systems, correct? But how can we prevent breaches? Uh, Database compliance and security play a crucial role in a company's corporate health, especially since its reputation is compromised after the breach, like I said. Database breaches create a challenging situation for sales and business development as the company now must deal with negative publicity and fines for non-compliance. Um, for a company that has suffered a serious data breach, it boils down to monetary and reputation damage in many forms, like business disruption, bad publicity, stiffness or non-compliance, and undermined confidence with the existing base of customers, partners, and employees. But most damaging of all is the trouble that it creates when it comes to signing up new customers. When a company's reputation has taken a beating, a data breach creates a steep hill for sales and business development to climb. That's why data security in general and database security in particular are a crucial part of any company's overall corporate health. Do you agree with that? Another thing at stake is it is too pricey in terms of when the data breach has happened. So database compliance is that important. Think that hmm, think database and data security aren't really important. Just ask the folks of Yahoo and LinkedIn, correct? Yun nga, yung 2012, both of these companies were victims of widely publicized data breaches. So just like what happened in BPI. So the combination of damaging and highly publicized data breaches and stricter regulatory compliance demands continue to push database security to foreground. Even at this day, database security still has an aura of mystery about it, almost as though it were a black art. Like, part of the mystery is driven by two simple facts. Many database professionals are not familiar with the security aspects of database management, while large number of security professionals have a grasp of desktop security but not database security. This is beginning to change as importance of securing database becomes more apparent. We can now see the importance of it. And then um, database are subject to some unique types of threats that cannot be handled by firewalls, intrusion detections and prevention systems, and other perimeter defenses. Even the basic set of security features typically offered by database vendors. That is why we really need to have regulations and we need to apply compliance with all of those standards because those things are not uh, sufficient. So Furthermore, database administrators typically do not devote anywhere near enough attention to security matters. So, on the absence of proper personnel to manage this function, obvious vulnerabilities will be overlooked and ultimately exploited. So, who do you guys think are the intruders? Um, the profile of the typical hacker has changed dramatically over the last few years, so we cannot identify them specifically. The stereotype image of the brilliant young loner who hacks into a secure environment for the sake of mischief and mayhem has given way to a different, more insidious threat. So members of organized crime syndicates who seek profit and prefer long-term stealth to short-term um, leads to cyber fraud professional, which is damaging to any company. And then concurrently with the change in the nature of the external threat, there is increasing attention being given to the insider threat. So aside from that, the criminalization of the general threat landscape also has an impact on crimes of opportunity committed by insiders. So it is too risky. It is often easier and quicker to offer a bribe to an insider sometimes who already enjoys access privileges than to attempt hacking from the outside. That is why many regulatory compliance requirements focus on privileged insiders as well, with special attention given to those whose action used to go unmonitored in the past. So, um, so much has been said and written about the DBMS vendors should cope with the vulnerabilities and how quickly they should develop patches for them. The reality over the past few years is the number of reported vulnerabilities is constantly rising until now. Despite the fact the vendors are doubling their efforts to patch them. So additionally, it usually takes a vendor several months or more to distribute a patch, and it takes an additional several months for customers to install the patches. So for these other reasons, many customers do not apply patches at all and their database remain vulnerable to severe attacks. So we have discussed the perimeter security. So it is not if sufficient if we just allow users to do anything in our database. So that's why we have compliance and security. There are many different compliance and laws and regulations nowadays. The compliance landscape has evolved over the recent past and changed the way many IT systems um, and applications are controlled as well as data. So here are the examples. So first is the Sarbanes-Oxley. So this is one of the example of regulations and their effect on database management and security practices. So for example, the Sarbanes-Oxley legislation of 2002 or SOX, it is forced publicly traded companies to be more transparent about their financial data. This is a federal law and does not specify technical measures or tools that enterprises should use, but rather requires them to have effective controls in place. Specifically, the SOX Section 302 um, certifies the accuracy of financial reports. This means that the company officers must have handle on how data is flowing to create the reports, and they must be certain that the data cannot be seen by unauthorized personnel or altered without authorization or otherwise tampered with. And its section 404 further requires executives and auditors confirm with the effectiveness of internal controls. While the exact nature of internal controls is not specified, auditors commonly put particular emphasis on ensuring the integrity of sensitive data, activity of privileged insiders, traceability of data, and separation of duties or audit independence. Well, obviously, most of the financial data resides in database in one form or another. So SOX auditors are increasingly looking for ways to view database activity in a way that can be easily interpreted and acted on. SOX does not assess serious criminal penalties for non-compliance when it comes to financial reports. SOX auditors require companies to establish, enforce, and validate segregation of duties with respect to access and changes to financial data stored on companies' database. For example, access only by authorized personnel. In particular, corporate officers who knowingly certify a statement that doesn't adhere on SOX compliance standards can be fined a maximum of $1 million or face a maximum prison sentence for 10 years. So another is the SSAE 16. So the statement on standard for attestation engagement is an auditing standard for the service industry that allows auditors to certify that a service company has the appropriate controls in place to safeguard customer data. It was put into effect last June 11 and effectively replaces SAS 70 as the authoritative guidance for reporting on service organizations. SSAE 16 was drafted with the intention and purpose of updating the U.S. Service Organization reporting standard so that it mirrors and complies with the new International Service Organization. And this is not a regulation but a standard, and one that gives organizations that adhere to it a badge of quality, which is important in the service industry. And then um, regulatory and regulatory compliance and security defines as compliance does not automatically equate to security. So you're wondering what's their difference, right? We could say a company may be compliant with a host of regulatory requirements while its databases remain exposed and vulnerable. There are several reasons why this happens. Regulations are limited in scope to whatever they are intended to regulate. For example, it is concerned with the credit card details and credit card details only. If someone stole your employee data, for instance, this would be of no concern of the PCI editors. So compliance is often audit focused, and audits are by nature activities that take place after the fact. So while you may discover that you had been breached 4 months earlier, it won't do you much good in reversing the data theft. So how about in reconciling compliance and security requirement? So regulatory compliance can be seen as burden, or it can be seen as a chance to streamline business processes and significantly upgrade security. To make the best of this opportunity, enterprises should align their compliance projects with security requirements to ensure that the requirement measures are implemented in one fell swoop. One can easily be preoccupied with the pressing requirements of regulatory compliance and put aside other considerations until those requirements are met. However, enterprises often have multiple compliance requirements to consider as well as a number of security considerations. Given the great overlap between the different requirements, it would be a waste of resources to go through separate efforts of each objective. So there are 5 principles of database protection. First, we should think that security is everything you do. Constantly examine your actions through a strong security filter. Start with application development and then move through through everyday tasks like user management and data management. In most IT environments, the database landscape changes on a regular basis with the additional of new database instances within both test and production environment. Given the dynamic nature of this landscape, it is critical to maintain maximum visibility into the number, location, sensitivity, and security posture of each and everyday database. This can be achieved via regular, deep database vulnerability scans, which will discover new databases and identify obvious, easy to remediate vulnerabilities that often go undetected due to lack of awareness and processes. One must ultimately think of database security as an ongoing process that, with the right dedicated solution, can be automated and optimized on its succeeding while maintaining this database. So second, we need to use the least privilege principle. The least privilege principle calls for users and applications to have the minimal privileges they require to function properly. This entails applying restrictions when the first granting users access to the database and reviewing access privileges periodically. So this pertains who can read, write, or delete or truncate some database in Postgres and MIS in MS SQL. We can both well, most DBMS should have that capability. Some organizations grant deep privileges to temporary workers, but forget to remove or change privileges when the work is done. Like for example, when a system is on um, beta testing, usually as developers allows everyone to read and write into that database because it is just on test. So we should have a scheduled check before that database will be launched in production so that we can ensure that security is on its place. And then And then next is we have to minimize the attack surface. It is most difficult to secure a large house with many windows than a small house with few windows, right? Database systems are the same. The more complex they are, the larger the attack surface. Strive to reduce the attack surface either by eliminating components that are not in use or by simply not installing them in the first place. So it would be safer if we settle with that. And the next is to encrypt, but not as panacea. Encryption is often the first thing that comes to mind when securing data. And it is certainly recommended for sensitive data. However, it can be expensive, difficult to use, and difficult to manage in a way that is secure. Encrypt only sensitive data that requires it, but be careful on how you manage the encryption or decryption keys and change them on a regular basis. Usually, passwords are being encrypted, database password. And it is important to combine encryption with other means and procedures such as activity monitoring, auditing, periodic vulnerability assessments, and user authentication. And then last, um, development, testing, and staging environments should, uh, like many organizations, invest efforts in securing their production databases but neglect to do so in development, testing, and staging environments. As the staging environment is often copied into production when it is ready, it should be secure as the production version. Beyond that, it is often the case that real production data is used in non-production environments without any masking. This poses a serious security risk and recommended that non-production environments are treated with the same tools and procedures one as production environments. So we have some practical steps to initiate all of these steps. So uh, haven't included it in the uh, presentation, so bear with me. First is the usernames and passwords, like the recent topic that we had with Doc. Weak passwords are widely regarded as a massive problem within the realm of IT security in reality, and it includes those that are short. So as mentioned by the earlier, our password should be 8 characters and above. So it would be difficult for the hacker to detect those passwords. Although there are tools available for download from the web that can crunch through hundreds of thousands of passwords per minute. Um, well, these types of tools can go through all of those words in Oxford English Dictionary in less than 30 seconds. But even by using inflections and combination of words and numbers, such as tool will break through every short period of time. So it is imperative to use strong passwords that contain combination of letters, numbers, and symbols. And then next is remove unnecessary components. Database management system today, specifically enterprise versions, are um, applications with many options that most people will seldom use. Certain database vulnerabilities exploit such add-ons and extensions. For example, in Oracle ATX, this multitude of components create a very large attack surface, and thus more opportunities to infiltrate the database. Maybe we can, maybe in your organization, you can review your database configuration periodically and remove components, unnecessary components, including various extension and add-ons that your users are not using. And then do not install components until they are needed. And the next is to apply security patches. New database vulnerabilities are uncovered constantly, and many are patched by database vendors themselves who issue updates and patches to the DBMS. It's not always easy to apply those patches because they require testing and database downtime. But even when deciding on a schedule where patches are applied twice a year, it is better than not applying them all. Ironically, it is precisely when patches are issued by the DBMS vendor and unpatched system are even more vulnerable to the attack. Do you know why? Because the public announcement of the availability of such patches also alerts potential intruders into the existence of vulnerabilities in specific modules. So an alternative and complementary approach is to use virtual patching tools such as the ones available um, from McAfee, but I don't know if this is still applies nowadays. Um, those tools create an external layer of defense on top of the database that specifically addresses vulnerabilities and issues alerts to or takes action to stop attempt to exploit them. And then another thing is to secure coding practices. Many database vulnerabilities are exposed due to the way applications are coded in their interaction with the database. Lack of accountability and lack of secure coding practices may open to floodgates to breaches the attacks. For example, in SQL injections in web applications, it can be sorted entirely by binding variables in SQL statements. But unfortunately, many developers do not use the bind variables method when developing applications, leaving the database exposed to SQL injections. So architecting and designing for security, validating input, and sanitizing data sent to other systems are some of the recommended methods used in securing coding. Uh, and then last is to monitor, and then audit again. So it's a lifelong cycle. You cannot protect an asset if you cannot see or don't know what that it even exists. This seems obvious, and yet most database administrators, and security professionals have no idea of the exact number, location, data sensitivity, and security posture of each and every database that exists within the environment. This is a massive challenge in environments with thousands of databases without proper tools. So auditing is an offline endeavor that looks back at the database activity over a period. And full native database management systems, auditing is impractical, right? As it significantly slows performance, but selective fine-grained auditing can be used. While certain compliance requirements may force you to audit everything and keep an infinite audit trail, it is also impractical in reality. The more benign actions you record, the less likely you are to notice the the conspicuous ones. Maybe try and work with the auditors to define the types of activities that are crucial, like accessing sensitive data, privileged user access, and the like, and record those. And then monitoring occurs in real time and is more actionable and useful in security terms. There are tools, most rather expensive, that are available for enterprise deployment. Some of these tools have protection of capabilities, but uh, now there is a breakthrough product that can monitor multiple database that terminates attacks by using policy violations as a tool, provide access to virtual patches that protect system from many known and zero-day vulnerabilities, um, and deliver uh, real-time notification through email integration. So, ayun.
Okay, thank you very much,
Mm,
Grace.
thank you.
Of course, what I
So,
want,
as a,
okay, what I want to
okay.
share to you is about the, because we have a lot, Miss Grace mentioned a lot of different regulatory, right?
Mm-hmm.
International regulatory management, no? Of course, in the Philippine setting, what we have right now is the data privacy, no? That is the coming from the privacy.gov.ph, no? The National
Mm-hmm.
Privacy Commission. At present, of course, they have a security measure for the protection of personal data. So they have data privacy and security. So that is a personal information controllers and personal information processor shall implement reasonable and appropriate organizational, physical, and technical security measure for the protection of personal data. The personal information controller and personal information processor shall take steps to ensure that any natural person acting under their authority and who has access to personal data does not process them except upon their instruction or as required by law. The
Mm-hmm.
security measure shall aim the wait for a while. Wait. Hello, sir. Hello. Oh, sige din. Maya. Okay, so sorry. Din Oliver Hunyo called me actually. So I get her his call. Okay. So again, the security measures shall aim to maintain the availability, integrity, and confidentiality of personal data and are intended for the protection of personal data against any accidental and unlawful distraction, alteration, and disclosure, as well as against any other unlawful processing. This measure shall be implemented to protect personal data against natural dangers such as accidental loss or distraction and human dangers such as unlawful access, fraudulent misuse, unlawful destruction, and alteration and contamination. So they have, of course, organizational security measures. They need to have a compliance officers, data protection policies, no, record or processing activities, and others. Okay, so I think that's it for today. Hello, Grace. Can you remove the sharing?
Yes, Doc. Stop share.
Okay, so I think that's it for today. Thank you and see you later. 10:05.
Hi, Doc. Thank you po.
Si Sir Dodi nag-send na ng ano, si Sir Dodi